Let's go. So welcome back to object orientation and C# programming today. And today we will begin with object orientation, which is a giant step for us all. And the cool thing is with object orientation, it's not very difficult to understand. The whole concept of object orientation is very easy actually to understand. And all the components we've learned so far, we can use now in addition. But it's like a fresh start for programming, and it makes the whole world just easier for us. And everything we are using nowadays, mobile applications, computer games, webcams, cameras, aeroplanes, cars, are based on object orientation or object-oriented programming. And that's the cool thing. So in the very beginning, it's maybe very, very easy, but always have in mind all those structures and all those components we need very much in the future. We will need them all the time. So that's the cool thing. So how do we begin with object orientation? We will begin with a project. Hopefully you see that. Do you see my project? Yeah. Okay. So we'll begin with a normal project like in Visual Studio, as we have seen. And the next step is in object orientation, we try to make templates for structures which we have to use all the time, again and again. We want to build overall structures where we can structure our own programs. This sounds a bit cryptic, but you will understand very, very soon. And I will explain it by computing an example. And how can we make an example? If we have created an example already, a project, we have to make a new class. And how do we make a new class? Whether we go to project, add class, or we go to console application, add new item, and then class. Or we can just add class. Here's what. I, in my opinion, prefer to add a class by adding it by up there, project, add class. Very important, add class. That's the first step, yeah? Yeah, you just somewhere there should be some area. If you don't find it in your view, then probably just go add class somewhere or add class somewhere here, or on the left side, on the right side, if you create a new project. Otherwise, you will find it. Okay. Just Google it. Google where how to add a class in your blah blah. That's important. So, did you find it, Eamon?
I tried.
Okay, just find add class. Because in some different versions, it's somewhere hidden, but normally it will pop up somewhere. I can show you, I can help you afterwards. Okay. Otherwise, just write your stuff in a Word file or in a WordPad. If I add a class here, sometimes it looks different. Okay, that's why I will add a class here by adding a class. Add class. And if we add a class to our project, okay, we have to think about every time we create something which has an overall structure for something, we create a class. Okay, it still sounds cryptic, but you will understand soon. Okay, I will begin with creating a class with the name human, and I will call this class human. The first letter of every class should be a capital letter. That's why I write human .cs. That's the first step. So I will try it again. I will test it again. I just approach project, add class. I will help you afterwards if you don't find it. Otherwise, Google how to add a class in your Visual Studio version. Okay, normally you will find it. Instead of writing class 1, you have to write the real name, what you want to write, and I will begin with the name human. Okay, I want to create a class with the name human, and in order to explain what a class does, and in order to explain what object orientation does, I will explain it by creating an example. So, but please, every time in the future, when you create a class, the first letter should be a capital letter. So I press add. First step. I will, if I have done it correctly, I will get a class with the name human. And in order to work with it, I have to go inside here. That's the first step. And if I'm in my project window, I have still my program here on the right side. And I have my class here. So the first step should be, you should be able to find your program and to find your class, which should be in the same folder. Okay, very important. And it differs from different Visual Studio versions. Sometimes it looks different. Sometimes it looks somewhere else. So please have a look where your class is. Emil, did you find the class?
I just do it with you.
Okay, but how do you find it? You found it. Okay, perfect. So please, the first concepts are very easy, okay? Very, very easy, and but yet very, very useful and very, very important, okay? What's a class, okay? We try to make different overall structures, like structures, templates, which we can use over and over again. For instance, we want to create a human, and a human has different attributes. A human has different attributes. For instance, a human has a name, every human has an ID, every human has a weight, every human has an intelligence, every human has a gender, whatsoever. So we want to create bigger containers where we can use them all over again and again and again. In other words, we want to create something like our own data types. Instead of using integers, strings, or floats, or doubles, whatsoever, we want to create our own data types. For instance, we want to create a data type which has the name human. Or we want to create something to describe the human. We want to describe every human. Every human has a name. Every human has an ID, has a weight, has something. So we want to create something to make structures easier to understand for us. And that's like the basic idea of object orientation. So for instance, every human has a name. So we can write string name. Every human has a weight. So we can write int weight. Every human could have an age. So I can write int age. Every human can have, for instance, a double intelligence, IQ. Or every human can have, for instance, a gender. I can write the gender maybe in a string as well. Gender can be a male, can be a female, whatsoever. So every human has a name, has a weight, has an age, whatsoever. And if you already think about some stuff like game development, for instance, we wanna create stuff in the future for game development, then of course attributes like integer health points would be interesting. Health points, or integer impact factor, whatever. There are many, many ways. And please, if you're sitting at home or sitting somewhere else, just add your own attributes already, because every human has a name, has a weight, has a IQ, has maybe an ID. ID can be, of course, integer, can be, of course, a string, whatsoever. And if you think about an attribute here, you can already begin to add it. Okay, so, and I call it attributes. Those variables we use in here are called attributes. Attributes, okay? Attribut in German, or Attribut in Norwegian as well. So attributes. And those attributes define my class. Every human has a name, every human should have a weight, every human has an age whatsoever. That's the first thing. In order to understand the basic concept of classes, I will create another class. Maybe I do it again. Project, add class. And I remember when I was a student long time ago after Second World War, I remember my professor, he said, let's begin with object orientation. And the first class he made, I remember, was a car. I remember my first class I made and I saw was a car. And I do the same stuff again. Here we go. And I create a class car. So every car should have, for instance, string name or string model or double horsepower, or integer gears, or integer passengers, stuff like this, which is very important if we want to create like a computer game with GTA or with Need for Speed. We always have to find all the different attributes of our class. So every class has its own attributes. Attributes again. So that's a car, and we will do 2 again. I will give you will have time after 5 o'clock. You will have time to create your own classes yourself. But in the very beginning, we just make a third one that we understand the concepts here again. So I make a third one that it's like getting easier for us. And for instance, I will create a superhuman. Superhuman. As we can see, the first letter has to be a capital letter. That's not a rule. That's just like should be easier to understand for us all. Superhuman. Here we go. And for instance, a superhuman could have different attributes, like a string name, of course, but maybe a string, a special ability, but also maybe I could tell maybe my superhuman is able to fly. So I could write something like Boolean is able to fly or can fly, can fly or not. If I want to have something which is like my superhuman can fly or cannot fly. So it's like a Boolean. Boolean is very important for us because it's very important that we understand, okay? It's like true or false. My superhuman can fly or cannot fly. The first thing we have to do today is always when we save something, we save all, okay? We save all the time, not save one file, we always save all, that all the files are saved. And if we want to work with our humans, now we want to create humans, now we want to create cars, now we want to create superhumans, what do we have to do? In order today, how we create such classes, how we use our humans now, or use our cars now, whatsoever, in the very beginning, we write the word public in order to be able to use it all the time. So we just write public all the time in the very beginning. In the very beginning, but this will be different in the future. But in the very beginning, we just write public because we want to use it from all different places. If we want to access our stuff from all different places, we just write public to all different, or to every item, to every attribute. Okay, that's a very important step in C# right now. This could be the first, this could be this exactly the same code in Java. This could be exactly the same code in C++. So in many programming languages, this should look like the same. This is kind of the same. So I have created a basic template for every human. I have created a template for every car. I have created a template for every superhuman. So every superhuman has name, has special ability, has blah, blah. Every human has name, weight, age, IQ, whatsoever. And every car has those attributes. So, but now, and that's a very important step in the beginning, now we want to create humans. We want to make cars. We want to make superhumans. How do we create such humans? How do we use those classes? How do we use those classes? How can we do that? We can do it like it follows. We go back to our main. We go back to our main. And of course, if you have problems afterwards, feel free to ask me after 4:30. I will help you fixing all the problems if you have problems. So the first step is, instead of writing console write line, I just uncomment it because I don't want to use console write line at the moment. I wanna create a human. In order to create a human, I have to remember the name of the class. The name of the class is human. So that's why I copy the name. Of course, I can remember it, but I always copy stuff. So if I want to create a human, I copy the name of the class, or I remember it, of course. I go to my program. And instead of writing human just by itself, how can I create a human now? I copy human, I just write human, and then I can call it whatsoever. I can call it H1, I can call it human1, I can call it A, I can call it B, I can call it C, whatsoever. I will call it H1 or human one. I call it human one. I call it human one. And then I have to use equals. And I want to create a new human. I want to create a new human. So that's why I write new human and parentheses like this. That's the first step to create a new human. So I have my structure with my human, and now I want to create a human. I want to create a human. So how can I create a human? I have to use the class. Then I have to give it a variable. I can use X, I can use A, I can use C, whatsoever, but I will use human one. And then I have to type is equals new human parentheses closed, semicolon. Many people say at this point, why don't call my human Peter? Why don't you call your human Arthur? Why do I call it human one? It has a special reason. If I call my human one, I can access now all the attributes in my human by typing human one dot, and now I can access all the attributes. For instance, I can access the attribute name. So I can give my human one the name, for instance, Peter, semicolon. And I can write, of course, I can write human one dot, for instance, I can write health points equals 100. I can write them. So why didn't I call my human Peter? Because if I would have called it Peter, it would have made no sense to make human one dot name is equal to Peter, because I can access the name Peter afterwards. So it makes no sense if I call it Peter, if I can give it the name Peter afterwards. It's like, it's more useful to give this stuff like a general name, like a more general name, because I can access all the different attributes afterwards by human one dot IQ, for instance. IQ for ID is 1, 2, 3, 4. So like this. And I can access all the different attributes by creating it. And then, for instance, impact factor is like 12. So I can access all the different attributes by using it. And if I access for instance, my ID is a string. If I use Visual Studio, I will see Visual Studio tells me, please use ID, because ID is expected to be a string. So I want to use a string here. So I have to use 1, 2, 3, 4 as a string. And 1, 2, 3, 4 as a string is possible. And of course, 1, 2, 3, 4 as an integer is possible as well. So this is possible. Okay. So how to create a human? Good. How to create a car? We want to create a car. So my car has those attributes: name, model, horsepower, gears, whatsoever. But I want to create different cars. I want to create a Skoda. I want to create a Ferrari. I want to create a BMW, whatsoever. Who cares? But I want to create cars. So I want to create cars. So how do we create a car? The first step is always typing the name of the class. Second step is typing some kind of variable. For instance, I will call it C1 is equals new car. Parentheses closed. That's a car. In order to access all the stuff, I can type C1 dot, for instance, name. I will use my plate ZE 715 FM. That's mine. Austrian Ferrera. Like Austria Ferrera. Here we go. And my model, it's not a Ferrari. I'm sorry. It's like a Skoda Fabia. Best word. Skoda Fabia. Oh my God. My old lady. And I wanna make like a years model, like a years model. So sorry. So model, a year built. I will call it year integer year. When it was built, I will just call it year. I will call it year. And if I create it here, I want to add when it was built. Let's call it year. And it was built not long time ago, 1945, after the Second World War, my Skoda. So that's like a car, but I want to create maybe another one. I just create another one because some people think, okay, I have created one class, so I can create one car. That's stupid. I can create so many cars as I want. I can create many cars now. I just show how we create a car. If I want to create another car, yeah, I create another car model, and that's like a Ferrari, yeah, or it's like a BMW, German car. Who cares about Germans? But they have good cars. BMW. No one likes the Germans, but okay. No one can be perfect. BMW, but also C2 name, passengers, horsepowers. This baby has a lot of horsepowers, like 250, let's say. And my horsepowers are not so much. Oh my God, let's be honest. 50 yards. Yeah, okay. Doesn't matter, but still my car is the best. This is the best car. Okay. So, and C2 car, horsepower, 250. Oh my God, that's a nice car. And so how to create a car? So we create classes, and then we build the templates, and then we create something with the class. Okay, we build. So I want to create superhuman, okay, to show it. This step is so important in the beginning that you get used to creating a class and creating something with the class. Okay, so I create a superhuman now. A superhuman, first to create a superhuman. Let's call it S1 equals new superhuman. Very important. You will do this stuff all the time, especially when programming computer games, especially when programming mobile applications. You have to do this stuff all the time. So S1 dot, for instance, name, let's call it name. Let's call it Bruce Banner. And my favorite S2 S1. So S1 dot special ability. He's the Hulk. He is the Hulk. That's the special ability. He can do everything. Okay, or like everything. Strong. I can write strong. So like this. So I can create a superhuman. And of course, if I want to create an interaction with my computer, because if I create this stuff, if I would just press compile, and I will help you afterwards when you have problems, nothing will be shown because this is just in the background. Okay, this is just in the background. But if I want to create now something, I want to give the computer interactivity. I want to create some stuff. So I will create a new superhuman now. Okay, I want to create this new superhuman like this. I will give you time afterwards to do your own stuff. Superhuman. And I want to give the computer now interaction. I want to say, okay, what's the name of your superhuman? How many characters do you have? How many health points do you have? In order to interact with your created stuff, how can we do it now? I can, of course, like before, I can use write line again, like console write line. Here we go, console write line. Maybe what's the name of your superhuman? Like this. Of course, we can begin combining stuff from before, like with stuff from now. Okay. Of course, if we ask what's the name of your superhuman, we can access the name of the superhuman by typing s2.name. So we can write something like, what's the name of the superhuman? s2.name equals, and we know console.read line, for instance. Here we go. That's like, but of course we can copy this stuff and use all the stuff from before. Maybe not what's the name of your superhuman, what's the health points? How many, what's the special ability? What's the special ability of your superhuman? What's the special ability of your superhuman? So instead of typing s2.name, we can type s2.specialability. If we use Visual Studio here, of course, we will see the huge advantage of using Visual Studio because it makes stuff so much easier for us. So much easier. If we use something like REPL.it, we have to code all the stuff ourselves, which is just stupid. That's why here we begin to see the huge advantage of programming with Visual Studio. And of course, I can write out some stuff if I want to display some stuff on the console. For instance, I will write stuff like console write line. The name of your superhuman was, just to show what we can do. The name of the superhuman was, and here we can type plus, for instance, s2.name, semicolon. So because if we use this stuff now, we will get an interaction. We will get interaction with the user. And if I look at it now, there we go. Hey, what's the name of the superhuman? Let's call him Peter. What's the special ability? Let's call it fly. The name of the superhuman was Peter. So I can, of course, type in stuff here. And Of course, I'm allowed to use console write line, I'm allowed to use console read line to access all the different attributes of my class. So if I create a class, for instance, human, and I just recommend afterwards, when you have time, that you create your own classes, that you play with it, okay, that you just test it and try it, trial and error, and think about such structures. But first of all, we have some time to go to give you input as much as possible. And if we create some classes, okay, the first step today is we create attributes in a class. We will soon see that we can create a lot of different stuff in a class. But if we create a class, the first step we do is we create attributes in the class. And if we create classes, we begin with capital letters. Okay, that's the first step. And we can create stuff with public, that we can access these attributes from all the other places. Okay, first step cleared. And if we create something with the class, for instance, human1, C1, C2, S1, whatever, those variables are called objects. And that's why this stuff is called object-oriented programming, because a human one is an object. So it's a very huge difference between a class. A class is a template. A human one is an object. So as a first step for today, I give you now some time. Please create your own classes, create your own stuff, your own attributes, and make all the stuff work. If you using different Visual Studio versions, I will help you, of course. And if you use REPL.it, whatever, I will help you as well. Can be trickier, but I can just recommend that you use Visual Studio if you have the possibility. If Visual Studio is too big, you can try to use Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is not that big, and it gives you much more power. I would never use REPL.it anymore from this step. Okay, I will stop the recording now because it's a lot of input, and the next input is very important, that you have like fresh brain. So I will help all the people now with problems, and just recommend create your own classes now, understand what's going on in the classes, and create different attributes and make your setup work now. Okay, I don't continue with new input now because this has to work, otherwise it makes no sense. Okay, so stop.